Alpine Liquid Fertilizers is your full-season crop fertility specialist from start to finish. Visit alpinepfl.com for more.
I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CQM and 980 CGME. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com, and it's great to be with you here. Hope you had yourself a great week. Brr, she was a chilly one. This is the kind of week, not just in Saskatchewan, across Canada, and even in the United States. Look at Florida. What is it, like Wednesday night they had like 10 inches of snow in Florida? Crazy. And this is the time of the year where somebody's like, when we think about some of the heat of places like Arizona, for example, and people don't like the heat, and it's pretty constant temperature, or it's like Hawaii. Hawaii is the better example. It's pretty much the same year round for the most part. Or at least that's sort of the way that we perceive it. People be like, oh, no. I like Canada. I like Canadian weather. I love weather in North Dakota and Montana because I like seasons. When it's cold like this, remember that comment, because I like seasons too. Not sure this much. Burr. So for everybody that has started calving out there, yeah, stay safe out there. Keep those animals safe and do the best you possibly can. I traveled this week. I was out in Toronto and had a great couple days of internal meetings with some of my fellow members at RealAgriculture. It was great fun doing some strategizing, do some thinking, and kind of plan for the future. Big plans for this show. I think we may have some news coming soon. But big plans for this show as well. This has been great. Such great audience feedback from you, the listeners across Saskatchewan, people listening to the RealAg on the Weekend podcast as well. It is great to have you, and continue to provide that feedback by sending me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, calling that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. We really do appreciate it. Well, today on the show, we're going to have Patti Durand. She is a family farm succession consultant. She travels across the country, speaks in the U.S. as well. And Patti's got a new book out. And what's cool about it is it's tackling farm succession from the viewpoint of the younger generation. A lot of times that's a generation that's ignored. We spend all of our time with the older generation, and there's this younger stakeholder, male or female, that's trying to become more than just, working on the farm. They want to become part of the operation from an equity position, but how do we make that happen? Hey, there's some wrecks out there, but there's also some companies that do it well. So we're going to hear from Patti about her new book. We're also going to hear an excerpt from the Truth About Ag podcast that we publish at Real Agriculture. It's hosted by Evan Shout and Kristjan Hebert of Hebert Grain Ventures at Moosomin, Saskatchewan. Do a great job interviewing a ton of different people across the industry. And in today's episode, we're going to hear Kristjan and Evan talking about just kind of breaking it down, talking about what's going on in the industry. What are some of their thoughts coming out of some farm shows that have been happening? Manitoba Ag Days was this week. Crop production, of course, last week. So you'll hear a part of that podcast. And then we're going to hear from Clint Jurke. He is a canola specialist with BASF, a longtime person with the Canola Council of Canada. And we've got a Canola School episode with Clint Jurke. I did already provide you with that email. That is shaney@realagriculture.com, so you can provide me with all of your feedback. How is that planning coming? How are you making out, getting ready for this 2025 growing season that is going to be here truly before we know it? It is fast approaching. And now the crop production show has happened, I think that's kind of like the trigger point for a lot of people, where it's like, okay, here we go. Here's what's really also on the go is Canada trying to sort out some of the issues with the Trump administration this week. We had the inauguration this week. We had President Trump talking to the big meeting there in Davos, Switzerland, and still talking about this 51st state thing, and there's going to be tariffs if you don't join the U.S. And boy, heavy stuff for this current Canadian government that is prorogued in Parliament, or when we do have an election and it looks to be a conservative government, heavy stuff for them to get through, because I'll tell you what, south of the border, it seems like if you're not, it's just, I don't know. This isn't like the last time, and Canada's got some work cut out for it in front of it, trying to steer through some of these challenges with the new U.S. president, indeed. Well, when we come back, one of the other tough lifts is family farm succession. We'll talk about that with Patti Durand when we come back. You're listening to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CKUM and 980 CGME. If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters, and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
When I was at Crop Production Show last week, I had the chance to catch up with a really good friend, somebody that does a lot of speaking across Canada and the United States, talking about succession planning, and she's got a new book out. Now, it's Patti Durand, and Patti does a fantastic job consulting families across the country in terms of succession planning. Now, she's written a new book, and it's from the perspective of the younger generation. What a great angle to tackle the issue, because so many times we focus on the older generation and try to assist them in getting through the process. There's also a younger generation that's also trying to steer through, keep it all together. They're a stakeholder as well, and we kind of ignore them at times. When I was at Crop Production Show, I had a chance to catch up with Patti Durand about her new book. Okay, tell us about the book. What's it called?
The Future Leader, The Successor's Guide to Family Business Leadership, is a book that I would call it a care package for successors. It's everything I wish they knew but have recognized are often missing in the conversations and expectations.
What was the push or the, because a lot of people talk about writing a book.
Yeah.
It's no small feat. It's a lot of work. I'm sure there's a brain dump element to this where just trying to get those thoughts to paper is difficult. What was the push and the motivation for you?
A few things, I would say, but primarily the fact that when I've been working as a business advisor, when I was working in coaching succession, facilitating these conversations, I was saying things on repeat. I'm like, wait a minute, these are foundational pieces of understanding that are missed. And when it became clear that it's very broad, it's a very universal issue in terms of successors navigating family dynamics and preparing themselves, I'm like, we need a resource. So I started looking for resources. They don't exist, or if they do, I haven't found them yet. And so this is my response to someone should do something.
Right.
And I put it on paper.
So what are some of the key messages?
It is really guided to think about, I'm going to say this differently. I'd say the topics are a mile wide and an inch deep. I want to give the successors a foundational understanding of their role as successor, some self-awareness, some understanding about family dynamics, some ideas about questions they could be asking or ways to ask those questions, and then just an understanding of the difficulties that their parents are navigating in the decision-making, but also the risk of the assumptions they might make in that process.
Is it written for the older generation or the younger generation?
This book is for the successor. And I will say that I don't see a lot of advice for successors in the marketplace. I think, unfortunately or fortunately, because they are not the ones with their name on title. The successor does not have check writing authority. They don't have cash in the bank typically. Who gets attention in succession are the people that have that, and that's the older generation. And so much of this information and advice is targeted to them. You get to read for the rest of your life on that topic. when it comes to the successor, they are craving direction, and I wanted to offer them something that was in a palatable form.
Do you find that they're in a position that lacks leverage?
It can be.
And I don't mean financial leverage. I mean just the leverage to get to the other side of being the successor.
Completely. And I mean, in many cases, it comes from a parent-child dynamic, right? So the parents see the authority, they decide, and then they inform the rest of the family. And for successors who are not only needing to understand the business, learn how to make decisions within the business, and then become that leader, they are patiently waiting, and they're often told, like, trust us, work hard, this will all be yours. But the clarity of how that's going to happen and the dynamics of how challenging it can be seldom is revealed. And I want to give them some tools to be able to ask those questions.
From a farm business perspective or succession standpoint, do you believe in sweat equity?
Sweat equity is a reality of our culture in many cases, and it's how many farms who currently lead farms came into the business. And so it's kind of a rite of passage. Work hard, you're earning future value. You're earning, maybe not getting compensated as well right now, knowing this will all be yours. However, sweat equity is an opinion, and it is often not tracked. And so while I hear it all the time, in the book, actually, I spend some time and reference some information that Merle Good came together with in Alberta Agriculture and his work with families is, can we define sweat equity? Can we track it at some level? What does it actually mean to each individual? Not that it has to be like, down to the last decimal place, but a general gist of, yes, there's value and this is how much it is, rather than just that ambiguous, amorphous number that everybody kind of is uncertain about.
We were talking here at, we're in a seminar room. I was doing the business of farming seminar or workshop, you want to call it. We talked about current events, then we talked about the reasons you may consider diversifying your farm. We had a lot of fun here with a great engaged group of farmers from across Saskatchewan. And when succession comes up, one of the things that was discussed from the audience and our panelists was the successor can fall into this trap of a sense of entitlement. Now, some of that is self-inflicted, but some of it can be from hearing some of that messaging of, hey, one day all this is going to be yours. And so I think it comes from a couple different places, but boy, it's a dangerous spot to be if you have that sentiment.
I think it falls in the category of many assumptions that are made. Is there actually a clear path of what is yours and how this will be earned over time? Is that actually named, and is there a clear way to increase your compensation? Will there be benefits that will be included? But talking about the entitlement factor, I think that's actually something I delve into in the book is the reality is successors are probably going to be a cost to the business for quite some time. So at some point, at some level, don't think you're special. Don't think that you're so valuable. Sure, labor has value. Presence has value. You do have purpose. But to say that you are so worthy and so special is not accurate either. And so there's certainly some conversations and some self-reflection encouragement, but it's done in a story format. People look at it as kind of in the second person about this story in the book, and I'm optimistic they'll see themselves and understand how they might need to maybe take their perception and pivot a little bit.
Are there common right ways for the successor to operate, to think, to progress forward in this role as the successor?
I genuinely believe there's no one way. And I would say that people tend to crave and look for the way to transition. And it's just not the reality of how it works. Farms and these businesses are unique. Families and the number of people, the number of skill sets and abilities are unique. And so it will be most perfect for you. But that's where my hope is the outcome of the book. Well, people are like, oh, I can do this, but I got a lot of work to do. And this can be a collaborative discussion over time, so we find that most perfect way. Because trying to say, we just need a plan, the likelihood of hitting the target is really low. But if you think about what we need, what we're capable of, and what we need to bring on board, starts to increase the likelihood of hitting the target.
What's always kind of boggled my mind a little bit about all this is that, so we have the successor and we have what we call it, the successee? Is that what we say? I don't know. So the older generation, the ones that hold all the financial cards, the leverage, the capital, really the decision on what this path is really going to look like or how this process is going to go. Those people all at one point were also very likely the successor. Yet the same patterns repeat themselves. That's called not learning from our mistakes. Now, it's not, broad brush. I'm really broad brushing. And that's not the case in all situations, but I think a majority of them. Why? What is the gap there? Why is that happening?
I think there's a lot of research in human nature that says, and I can say my own impromptu research on the number of reps with families, is that people do what they know. And so, as a general rule, they tend to take the same pattern of succession to the next generation, the way that they inherited the farm. But I'll tell you, the dials have moved. The values have increased exponentially. People are living much longer. What got us here won't get us there. And so, for that reason, the book, I think, could be an opportunity for everybody to pause and say, what will work best for us? That is what worked before, but also what were the missteps we made, and how might we interrupt that cycle? So pausing and naming it, that's actually a moment where I'll say, I've had farm parents read this, and they're like, first of all, I wish I had it 20 years ago when they were the successor. And second of all, it's giving us a language and some ways to open the conversation differently that we've been craving. I'll tell you this. I know these families. They are smart. They are intelligent. They are experienced, and they care. They've just never done this before. And so it's okay that they maybe are struggling and seeking some resources. And ultimately, this is one of the things that might be helpful.
You've coached a lot of families on this topic. In doing the research for the book, were there any aha moments for you where you're like, really? Like maybe something you hadn't thought about it from that angle, or it was a piece of data that sort of stuck out to you, and you wish you maybe know that earlier. Any ahas in your lead up to getting the book completed?
What became clear was really important to me was that just exactly how universal the issues are in family business. So I gave myself two challenges. Number one, I do not reference agriculture once in the book. This is family business. This is family dynamics. And
entrepreneurs.
It is entrepreneurial, for sure. Number two, it is not, doesn't pick gender. It's universal. So in the book, the two characters, I actually instruct the reader, Kelly and Jordan, you get to decide if they're male or female. And not to be trendy or tricky, just that I didn't want the book someone to read it and say, well, this is about men, so it's not for me. Or vice versa. This is about women, it's not for me. Yeah. If they can pick it their own, and that's what beta readers have told me, they're like, obviously it's two men, or obviously it's two women. I'm like, oh my gosh, it worked. If I can open the door for people to understand that they're not alone, and that they have an opportunity to change the story, whatever path they're on, in positive ways, and take ownership of their own development, is a great day. And I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah. Okay. What's the name of the book again?
The Future Leader: The Successor's Guide to Family Business Leadership. And it's available at thefutureleader.ca in audiobook. So it's on Audible, it's on Kindle, it's on ebook, and you can order it in print. And I have many families that are ordering multiple copies so they can work through it as a family. And that just lights me up, because I think it can open doors that might be inaccessible otherwise, or I've witnessed them being inaccessible otherwise.
Did you read the audiobook?
I did.
How was that experience?
To get to put my expression and emphasis behind the words was more powerful than I imagined. I care about this a lot. I'm excited to put this tool in people's hands, and to have the intonation and expression was it's a pretty big deal.
Cool stuff. Hey, Patti, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I appreciate it.
That was Patti Durand talking about her new book that is out. You can get it, audio book. You can also get the paper copy as well, wherever you get your books. And would love to have you read it and send me your feedback. What did you think? My email address is shaney@realagriculture.com. We've got more coming up here on Real Ag on the Weekend. Next, we're going to hear a part of a podcast that we publish at Real Agriculture called The Truth About Ag. And it's hosted by Evan Shout of Kristjan Hebert, both of Saskatchewan. And we'll play that when we come back. You're listening to Real Ag on the Weekend here on 650 CKOM and 980 CGME. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomics Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BASF Canada.
Manage wheats early in your canola, cereals, and pulses with Conqueror, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO, powered by Duplisand technology. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed burn down from New Farm.
At RealAgriculture.com, we produce a lot of different podcasts. And one of the podcasts that we have added to our lineup is The Truth About Ag. It's hosted by Evan Shout and Kristjan Hebert of Hebert Grain Ventures out of Moosomin, Saskatchewan. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. You go to RealAgriculture.com to find it as well. We also publish it on our YouTube channel. And Kristjan and Evan have some great guests, some really, really great guests. And in this episode, though, they don't have a guest, and they just start riffing on, it's almost like a farmer coffee shop between the two of them. It's almost like you can imagine that Saturday morning conversation when they get together and talk about what's going on in the world of agriculture. They started this week's episode talking about farm shows and why you go or why you don't.
We're going to keep this one a little lax. We don't have a guest today, so I feel like I've seen you every day this week, so I'm not sure what we have left to talk about, but let's start with crop production. I mean, obviously the farm shows probably have a little less warrant as your career gets long, but like for me, they've changed a lot. So I kind of want to know when you come to a crop show, what are you looking for nowadays?
Well, I mean, I guess the big issue is I came to a crop show for 2 days and I walked through the crop show to go have a beer with a friend. That was all I did at the crop show. I think that for me personally, what a crop show does is it brings everybody into one spot and saves me 3 weeks of travel, whether that be, farm network people, whether that be CEOs of companies, or whether that be people in the political world. It still gets a lot of people in the same city for a bunch of reasons. So I can use it to reduce travel. But I mean, I think an interesting thing too is we did that recent survey, right, of the Farmer Coach group, and we're going to do a bigger one of agriculture in general with a partner. And I think, what did it have? 40 some responses, and agronomy was ranked number 5 in that what farmers want more of. And then the shows are still pretty heavy on, agronomy and machinery type stuff. And our network saying they want more stuff around entrepreneurship, around CFO type work, on being the CEO, understanding marketing and logistics better, those types of things.
Yeah, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I remember walking around with Dad as a kid. So, I mean, I still see the benefit of bringing the kids in, letting them see the machinery, getting them excited about ag. But for me, I walked it for 20 minutes and I was like, same show, different year. And then I went and did the meetings I had to do, and that was it. So, I mean, they've definitely taken on a different meeting, and maybe it's a bit because 2025, I don't think equipment quite looks as sexy in the balance sheet, but yeah, I think that's definitely changed.
We still, you want to know what, there's one coming up in Brandon here, Manitoba Ag Days, and they still have quite a bit of I don't want to call it, like they have some of the big equipment, but they have all that operational efficiency type equipment. So I take, like, some of my key guys all go to it, and that's where we originally found, the tire changer for the skid steer, to have for on the sprayers, and different things for helping change oil faster and stuff like that. I think, some of the shows for some of your crew can still be super. That's still where you get some of the ideas. I think at our level, a lot of the ideas we're getting on strategy and stuff are coming from more confidential type meetings than they are at the show, right? But you still run into some pretty good people.
Well, and I mean, I went to four different meetings, and none of them were at Prairie Land. So, I mean, the only reason I went to Prairie Land is to sit on a panel for an hour. So, no, it's a bit of a different experience, I find. So, it's been a while since we sat and chatted, but I mean, I know my spring, the last couple of weeks has been a whirlwind. So I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on, I went down to Texas for a week, down to A&M and did TPAP. And I wrote the blog last year about my experience, and it was a great experience. Good again this year. A little bit of a different feel probably, being in San Antonio rather than Austin, but I know you have fond memories, and I know you're still part of the board there. So give me your overall on TPAP, and then I made my top 10 list of the things I wrote down because I took notes this year, and I want your opinion on some of them, and I'll give you my opinion, and then we'll just kind of go through and give the audience a bit of a, here's what TPAP brought to my mind and what I found was really interesting this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of the overarching features, I think one of the issues in agriculture is we don't think big enough and we don't look outside our circle enough for solutions to some of the stuff we're having problems with. And I think that's, I got lucky, my run at TPAP, I got to know Danny really well, and it really turned into a mentor. I mean, he was on the advisory board for our companies, and I would argue if he isn't the best mind in agriculture of all time, he's in the top 3 for sure. So
there's a little sneak peek of the Truth About Ag podcast. If you have not listened to it, I encourage you to do so by going to RealAgriculture.com, I should say, as well as the Real Agriculture YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back, we're going to talk canola with Clint Jurke of BASF right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
RealAgriculture.com, we do a Canola School. It's sponsored by BASF, and you can find more episodes by going to canolaschool.com or checking out the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. Amber Bell of Real Agriculture recently had a chat with Clint Jurke, who is with BASF, to talk about some considerations and thoughts heading into the 2025 growing season related to growing canola.
So let's just jump into the meat of this. What are the average yield targets in Saskatchewan typically? Like, what are people looking for?
It really depends upon your soil zone and where you're farming. Like we know that yields can fluctuate all the way from 20 bushels up to 80 bushels within the province of Saskatchewan and all 3 prairie provinces really. And so it's what we would like to communicate at the Canola Council is really encouraging growers to think really seriously about what their yield targets potentially could be. What we do know is that oftentimes when we ask farmers what they would like to get in their fields, it's often a lot higher than what they actually do get, and that's no surprise. But there are a number of things that we can do to take a more systematic process in which we can try achieving what we would really like to see in the field.
And so looking at what producers are kind of looking for right now, how does that trend historically? What have they looked for in the past comparatively?
So when we're looking at canola yields, actually we've seen a really nice increase in canola yields right across the country, right from the Red River Valley to the Peace River, of increasing yields right from 2000 up until right around 2016, and now yields have kind of gone flat since then. And so likely what we're looking at is mostly due to weather that yields have increased, but we also do know that farmers have been investing more into their canola crop, investing more into the fertility, more into inputs, crop protection products, and that type of thing. And so we have seen a really nice steady increase in yields, but they have plateaued a little bit recently.
Okay, so with that kind of trend, you mentioned that yield targets can be anywhere from 20 to 60, 70.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest factors for whether or not a producer is going to actually meet the targets that they set?
Well, weather is the number one factor, but the number two factors and number three, there are agronomic choices. So when we're looking at canola, crop rotation has a big influence on that. We do know that the tighter the crop rotations get, the lower that the yields do start decreasing. We see a couple of percentage points decrease going from like a 3-year rotation, like a 2-year break from canola, down to a 2-year rotation, like a 1-year break. Crop rotations have a big influence. Fertility programs have a huge influence. And when we look at fertility numbers, we actually are seeing that a lot of farmers maybe aren't fertilizing to what the yield potential of the area potentially could be. Where we are here just outside of Lloydminster, like it's pretty possible to get a 60 bushel yield. But we do know that a lot of farmers are fertilizing at 90 pounds of nitrogen as an example. That only puts you in the 40 bushel range. And so there is upwards potential, but those additional costs always do bring concerns like financial risk and things like that. So that's the balance that farmers always have to play with.
Mm-hmm. And what would be your recommendation for knowing exactly how much nitrogen you should be putting out on your fields?
Well, step one, and no one likes to hear it for some reason, is to do a soil test, to get a good understanding of what your background fertility is, what you do need to add. And then we do have a lot of tools that are available to us in the ag industry here in Canada that like nutrient removal calculators are available, so that if you are getting a 60 bushel yield, you can see exactly how much of that nitrogen you are shipping off of your farm, how much of that potassium that you're shipping off, and so using those numbers and your soil test numbers, and just even looking at what the recommendations are by the soil testing labs, will help you dial in your fertility a lot more. Working with a good agronomist will be a huge advantage as well to helping you determine what is going to be the best fertility rates for your farm. But there are other things as well that can have an influence on, say our yield target is 60 and here in the black soil zone, and we're only getting 50. Well, at the end of the year, it's probably a good idea to take a close look at what took away that yield. Why did what's the gap? Was it just rainfall? Was it too many hot days in July? Or was it some agronomic choices? Was it the fertility program, or did we miss some insects that maybe caused some problems? Was blackleg a problem? This is one of our bigger diseases that consistently takes away yield. Getting some measures and having an understanding of why you did not hit what your yield target is going to help really out with making better decisions going ahead for future years.
Is there a tool available that can help producers figure out exactly where that yield gap is coming into play?
Any tools? Well, Canola Encyclopedia. It has all the information around crop production, but talking to experts, I think, is likely going to be one of the better, like having a good agronomist that's going to be able to help you out with understanding what pests are in the field that potentially could be having an impact on your yield and ultimately your profitability, and really looking at that fertility package. I wish there was just a calculator.
Right?
You could put
like
everything
something that'll
into.
just help figure it out.
That'll do everything.
I guess a big part of that comes down to going out in your field and scouting throughout the season too, right?
Spending time in the field, knowing exactly what's happening, is your best investment. And the more you can put your shadow, as one of my colleagues likes to say, your best investment is your shadow. The more you can put that in the field, the better off you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier that weather comes into play, that the last few years have kind of changed things because of the weather. So are there strategies that producers can put into play to mitigate some of the adverse effects on what weather will do to yield targets?
Yeah, so that's a $1 million question, isn't it? Like, what can we do to weatherproof your crop? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to reference a research study that was done a number of years ago by Ag Canada, where they looked at the value of all of the inputs that you can invest in your crop. Herbicides, fungicides, fertility, seed, seeding rates. They looked at the whole gamut and tried to determine which one of these components, which one of these inputs provides the most value. And the conclusion was that you need to have all of the values to really maximize your profitability. And so oftentimes, like, we'll have growers that we know that we're coming into some adverse conditions. What can I dial back? Should I dial back a little bit on my nitrogen, maybe on my plant population? What came out of this study, and it was a big study, it was multi-year, multi-location, and it showed that when you start cutting back on your inputs, you're cutting back on your profit. So sure, you're cutting your costs, but you're actually taking more money out of your pocket in the end as soon as you start dialing back. So what we learned out of that is that you need to fully invest in your canola crop to really maximize your profitability, even in the adverse years. Like, the yield gap actually got larger for whenever there was stressful conditions. That the profitability actually went up if you had the full package of inputs in stressed years. So how do we weatherproof our crops? It's just following the best management practices. Unfortunately, there isn't any real magic bullet that we can use that's going to fix all of our problems. If we have diseases or insects or anything like that, it's just following all of the best management recommendations, and that is what's going to buffer the weather and the extremes that we see in a growing season.
Right. And how much does things like direct seeding or rotation, much does that come into play when it comes to managing some of the adverse weather conditions? Well,
yeah, so direct seeding, minimum till, zero till, these are long known to be like one of the best things that we can be doing. That's a great way of managing your risk for moisture loss and ensuring that there is moisture, particularly in dry times. So that is definitely one of the best management practices. So yeah, having a diverse crop rotation is as well provides a lot of yield increase. It's good for all crops, like having a 2 or 3 year break in between each crop. It manages diseases. It adds more diversity to in terms of what's happening in the soil, and so. Yeah, all of these things are part of the best management practices. So if we can follow these, then we're going to have a much more profitable crop.
Okay, so that is a lot of information to take in. It's been really good. Do you have any words of encouragement for producers going into this growing season?
Well, yeah, so we talked a bit about scouting. So spending as much time as you can in the field to get a good understanding of how your crop is advancing. And so we talk all about this in terms of canola, but really any crop, and the better that you know that. And I know that a lot of growers have a lot of land in which to try covering. If you don't have the time to spend time in the field, like, see if you can get some help with it, because really knowing what's happening is going to only help you out with becoming more profitable in the long term.
That was Clint Jurke of BASF talking to Real Agriculture's Amber Bell on a recent Canola School episode. And like I mentioned, you can check out more episodes of our Canola School on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or at canolaschool.com. Now, if you have any feedback on anything we talked about here today, or maybe it's something we didn't, love to have your comments, your questions, your considerations, maybe a bit of a rant. You can let us have it. SHaney@RealAgriculture.com is my email address, or you can call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Have a good rest of your weekend, Saskatchewan, and thanks so much for getting real and getting connected with Real Agriculture. Cheers, everybody.